What's going on, everybody? This is SJG. Welcome to HBCU Game Day. We have a very special guest for you guys today. He is a HBCU bandsman. He's also an expert about HBCU basketball, and he's just an all-around good brother. Had a chance to finally meet him after so many days, after so many months and years of conversing about HBCUs and particularly HBCU sports and HBCU basketball. So I wanted to bring him on, but before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube. And if you are subscribed, make sure you hit those notifications so you can see all the videos we have, all the videos about all the things, you know? So there's a lot of things going on. Without any further ado, I want to introduce again this gentleman's name is Herbert Seward. He is a DC native. DC native, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I didn't know if it was. I didn't know if you was in the M or in that little part of the B that y'all consider, a
Nah,
part.
bruh.
So yeah, so he is
Fifth,
a DC, real DC, Chocolate City when it was Chocolate City native.
Fifth and
Um,
Kennedy Street, bro. Fifth and Kennedy Street.
Fifth, Fifth thing, it don't get no chocolate. So went to Alabama State, played in the Mighty Marching Hornets band, and so he knows a lot about that world. I think he's been on some books about that, and some literature and some big stories on that. And then also he's a big time HBCU hoops head, and so. Without any further ado, Herb, welcome to the channel, and thanks for giving us some of your time today.
Thanks, man. I gotta admit, man, I never thought I'd see myself on HBCU game day, on in any capacity in terms of just the way the platform is. I gotta give you and Tolly and those guys a shout out, man. Y'all been, y'all are a real inspiration to folks that are that follow HBCUs and HBCU sports and culture. So yeah, man, thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate that from you and all the people that fed our way. We appreciate the love and support, and we deal with everything else. So we appreciate you for sure. A couple topics I want to get to with you today. But first, we'll take the hot topic in HBCU sports right now, and that is one Deion Sanders, aka Coach Prime, the former coach at Jackson State University, now the head man at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And so, hey, Coach Prime, there'll be different chapters of HBCU sports. There's the pre-Coach Prime era and the post-Coach Prime era. And so now we're living in the post-Prime era, but obviously still a lot of things there dealing with HBCUs, including his most recent video that was put on his son Deion Sanders Jr.'s show, Well Off Media, where they went in to have a conversation with the band directors at CU. So we're going to go ahead and show the clip for folks who haven't seen it. Let them digest that a second, and then we'll come back and we'll get your opinion on it as a HBCU bandsman and someone who takes it very seriously.
A lot of people, so we're happy to reintroduce ourselves too.
At HBCUs, it's kind of traditional that the band kind of coincides. I know it's a difference, but it don't have to be. We like one big happy family. So we go as you guys go. There's certain things we like, certain things we don't like. And I want to just get on the same page. And we probably gonna have a new theme song that I want you guys to get, and it's not hard. And I think you can knock it out of the park because it's kind of a band type song. And I need to get somebody to play it so I can let you hear it. So I don't know if you know it, but when I say pregame speech, give me my theme music, and then the music clicks on because we always have a DJ in the locker room.
So Herb, I know obviously you've seen the video before that, but now everybody else has seen the video. Talk to us about you. Again, as an HBCU bandsman, someone who takes the craft seriously and very protective of the culture. When you see that, what was your initial reaction? And now that we've had a little time to come to live with it and sit with it, what are your thoughts?
Well, first I want to preface, what I'm about to say by stating that um, Coach Sanders trying to, enhance the game day experience of fans in Colorado. That's something that's natural that coach should be able to do, and that means kind of talking to the support organizations around that game day experience for fans. That's one thing. Um, Now that that's said, what we saw on the film ain't it, and I'll say that for a couple of reasons. One, um, what HBCU bands bring to HBCU football and the culture of HBCU football is something that's developed over decades. That's the first thing. And I think that's something that you can't readily pick up and replicate, if at all. Um, and I think when we watched the clip, first thing Deion kind of hints at is like, yeah, well, I know you guys do things a little bit different than HBCUs, but there's no reason why you can't be the same way. And no, you can't. Simply because, you know, the way that bands and HBCU football grew together, they had to grow together out of necessity. They had to grow. They had to grow together because we had to be creative and innovative in order to keep those athletic programs afloat, and in order to get fans to to stay engaged. And that's something that goes along with the fan engagement piece of it. When you look at Jackson State, when you look at Southern, two of the more visible HBCU fan bases out there, those guys travel, wherever the team goes, wherever the band goes, and the band's an integral part of that. I think the other thing is that and this kind of needs to be stated as much as possible. HBCU bands are an attraction unto themselves, meaning that you put an HBCU band or a competition in the stadium in front of the general public, it's going to draw. And that's one of the biggest things that I think Coach Prime, in his 2 years there, it says a lot first about what he understood and what he didn't understand about HBCU culture on campus as it relates to, his job, as it relates to being a coach of an HBCU football program and understand how the culture and the sports are intertwined, are integrated on that level. And it's, when we saw it, I was like, come on, bro, don't do this. This is not a good look. And it's not so much a knock on Colorado or anything like that, because Colorado, as anybody that's follows college football, the Pac-12 has its own game day traditions. Colorado has Ralphie Buffalo that they run before every game. Boulder is a scenic place. USC and UCLA, those band programs and things have their own, game day traditions. I think the big problem that myself and a lot of other folks that have been immersed in the culture, have been part of that culture, have with this is that it sends the message that you really didn't grasp why that integration was important. It's not something that you can pack up and take with. So you're asking, the band director, you got the band director of Colorado and the staff in the office, like a principal, like the dean of music or something, and you're asking them to completely disregard whatever game day traditions they have to develop an HBCU-like game day tradition on their campus. And it's something that, it was funny at first, but in hindsight, it's kind of cringeworthy because it's like you really don't understand what you left. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't say that to be negative. I would hope that this is something of a teachable moment for both him and for folks that don't understand why we take this very seriously. And a lot of times you see it on social media where we, folks that are HBCU grads or immersed in HBCU culture gatekeep hard over stuff like, bands and dance teams and things of that nature. Because, one, those are things that we take a lot of pride in, number one. And number two, those are some of the biggest marketing tools that, you know, HBCU schools that have them have. You know, anytime you look around, you see a Jackson State or a Southern University or Norfolk State, or most recently, Tennessee State won a Grammy, for, um, I mean, yeah, that's rarefied air right there. Tennessee State winning Grammys. Norfolk State is doing music videos that won Grammys. Texas Southern is highlighting, WrestleMania features. It's, I mean, it's a history that's kind of gone, um, that's always been talked about, but now that HBCUs are really, really back in the limelight, that needs to be talked about more because this is kind of something that highlights why we gatekeep the way we do, you know, and it's and like I said, it's not a big, to me, it's not a condemnation of what Coach Prime was attempting to do. I just think that's something that he needs to really kind of take a step back and like, wow, okay, I'm really trying to recreate something that I really didn't understand too much about when I was there. So,
Right. Yeah, and I think you make some really great and interesting points, man. And I'm by no mark a bandsman. Although I do hope that you notice in my background because I knew you were
yes,
coming.
I
I
peeped
threw up my
it.
picture from the
Yes,
Me X
sir.
Mighty Martian Hornets. Shout out to always the Stingettes and also our girls, the Honeybees. They all do an amazing job. When we look at the landscape, so it's interesting. So week one of last season, I got a chance to be at the MEX of course. So it was the band, the band you played in,
Mhm.
the Mighty Marching Hornets, versus the band, one of the bands I'm sure you grew up on, Howard University, Showtime Marching Band.
Absolutely.
A program that's very much in the spotlight, even though very much criticized. Hey, but hey, I understand how that goes.
Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
then and then I went to and then from there 2 weeks later uh I was at Death Valley where LSU hosted Southern University, and you talk about the dichotomy between the HBCU bands and the PWI bands and the things like that. And I believe the director of bands over at LSU, I interviewed him. He is a Jackson State grad. And
Yes.
look, man, I gotta say, the LSU band brought a lot of flavor with it. Never will be the same, but what are your thoughts? What are the thoughts of some of the folks that are really deep into this in the band world, as it relates to HBCU band culture, being taken on in the mainstream and things like that? I'm curious.
Well, I think, well, first, I think, HBCU culture being part of the mainstream isn't anything new. It's something that's, you know, for people that are new to social media or new to the platform, this phenomenon didn't just start with Twitter. It started with, I mean, you could go all the way back to Super Bowl involvement to back to the 1950s and 60s, and you have marching bands like Grambling, like Southern, like Jackson State, like Alabama State. We did a couple of Super Bowls. Um, to be to
Go ahead and
be
flex, man. You go ahead and flex. It's all good.
yeah, so to be front and center in terms of being recognized by um, mainstream sensibilities. Florida A&M is a good example. The Marching 100 is a globally known brand now. Those guys have done everything from the French Bastille Day celebration to winning the Sutler Trophy, being the only HBCU band to do so. Um, it's it's one of those things where you have to really know the history, and by knowing the history and being immersed in it, yeah, as a bandsman, I'm immersed in it, and the people that I normally converse with and talk to as it relates to band culture are immersed in it, so they're familiar with the history. But sometimes, people don't really get that. For example, Norfolk State, there are a lot of ties, and I'm pretty sure Norfolk State folks will tell you this. Spartan Legion has a really, really, really good band. I thought about, I came real, yeah, yeah, and that band is come, has been around for a while. I came real close to going there, during my time of looking at schools. Um, what a lot of people don't know is that, Emory Ferris, who, was one of the, uh, most visible band directors there back in the day, there's a lot of ties between Norfolk State and Big Ten schools, specifically Michigan State. Um, and the same can be said, with kind of how certain band programs, really gain that type of notoriety. And I think, and like I said, this is something that I think people need to really understand about, the greater discussion as it relates to bands and how have been an integral part of making the HBCU game day experience something that is probably the most unique in all of collegiate athletics. To me, there's nothing else that really compares to going to a Bayou Classic or going to a Magic City Classic or going to a Boombox Classic between Jackson State and Southern, and seeing, that element of integration and that element of just, people just enjoying the entire experience of being at a football game at an HBCU.
Yeah,
Um,
man. I love how
you
you
know,
said the HBCU game day experience.
yeah,
Um, that's really where the name came from. It's really from because it's an entire experience, and the band is part of that. But even then, as much as the band is, it's and the bands can play whatever songs they want to play. They can copy from whatever one they want to copy or take from this and that, and I think they all do. I mean, we've still got the great debate going on our Facebook 3 years after the story was written about who actually performed neck first.
yeah,
Certain things like that. But I think the thing about it is you can never replicate the culture. And I think again, when I look at Coach Prime in his time, I was able to go to Jackson several times and experience it, and to see that many people, mostly black. I mean, there were some of every ethnic background, but mostly black people, and experience and at pretty much all at the same time experiencing similar levels of joy. Even the people that were in the opposing team, when one or the other band is cranking, you can't really, unless you're like, like the super band heads, because I know some of y'all are really just, do y'all enjoy y'all ever enjoy any of it? But,
yeah,
it's just when they play certain songs, it's like everybody's head's gonna pop. Everybody knows it. And, I think back to when Coach Prime's last game at JSU, when, the King George song is being played, and everybody's just having joy, and everybody's just, and it'll never be that at Colorado. I think I think he knows that. I hope he knows that. But I think there's certain things that just don't translate the same, and it's going to be really interesting for sure to see how that goes. And I think this is the discussion that we could have literally forever, even beyond bands. I look here in North Carolina, where we're surrounded by schools. First of all, we have 10 HBCUs, the most 4-year HBCUs, and I look at our schools really are culture. Our culture is really unmatched in so many ways to where North Carolina State hired a young man that went to my alma mater, DJ Trells, to be their DJ, and he did some great things for them. And then also someone else that I went to school with, football, Bilat.
I know
He's
B-Mac.
basically in charge of the crowd at the Dean E. Smith Center. You know
Yeah,
what I
B-Dot's
mean?
a good dude.
So yeah, it's our culture is unmatched, and it's only going to make sense that other folks are going to want to pick some of that but they can never truly replicate it. Um, so I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
I completely agree, and I think that goes to the bigger discussion um, as to why we um, gatekeep as hard as we do when it comes to those traditions and it comes to those nuances that make the HBCU sporting and game day experience or the experience in general unique. I mean, just mentioning that, I can think about my time at Alabama State and how many times we had kids from UAB, we had kids from Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama come down and check out the band while I was practicing and check out the scene on campus while we were preparing for Classic Week for our matchup with Alabama A&M during the Magic City Classic. And if you've ever been to a Magic City Classic, at Legion Field, Legion Field holds 60, 65, 70, K easy. And it was always packed out, and it wasn't just, people from Alabama State and Alabama A&M there. It was, the city of Birmingham was kids coming down from, Alabama. Hey, Alabama might have a game that weekend. You got kids that are, uh, doing double duties. Like, okay, man, the game's over with. Maybe I can catch the classic. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where people really don't get why they really don't get the draw until you experience it. And once you experience it, it's like, okay, I gotta have I have to be a part of this. And I think this is something in terms of the greater framework of that discussion we were just referring to. Um, the HBCU experience is the HBCU experience. It's um, it's not, there are aspects of it that you're not going to be able to replicate. Whether, and this is not, it doesn't just apply to football games either. It applies to how you feel when you walk across campus, or going into Club Corbett, or going into games for a basketball game and experiencing that atmosphere, that type of energy, between, for a rivalry game. You know, Mind you, you go to places like, say, and I'll use Cameron Indoor Stadium for example. Yeah, it's a unique experience. It's a unique game day experience, but it's not the same as going, to games, or it's not the same as going to Eccles and seeing Norfolk State and Hampton play for the Battle of the Bay. Um, it's not the same as what we've seen in the MEAC this year, in terms of basketball. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I hope, um, I don't fault, Coach Sanders for trying to enhance his game day experience in Colorado. I just hope he understands that you're not going to be able to pack up and replicate what you had at Jackson there. It's not going to happen. And quite frankly, it's something that you need to kind of take a step back and understand that the campus culture that you're at now is a little bit different than what you left. And it might be a good idea to, start appreciating those differences and integrating them into shaping the game day experience that you want, as opposed to saying, okay, you need to do this like HBCUs do. That's kind of a that's kind of a non-starter. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, I think I can say this for a lot of folks that are in the HBCU, band space, uh, that we're kind of, looking at this whole thing with a raised eyebrow, and we're like, eh, it's like the meme, it's like, I don't know, dude. I don't know if that's gonna work.
okay, okay, good stuff there, Herb. Yeah, man. As always, I know you're on it. Make sure you let everybody know where they can follow you and your work. Again, the great work that you do.
Yeah, man. Well, first and foremost, I am a contributor for HBCU Digital Network. Um, I write about HBCU football and basketball for HBCU Digital, as well as HBCU sports culture, include the bands and pretty much everything else in between. I am also a podcast host. I run a tech podcast on HBCU Digital Network called the Black Techies Podcast. Shout out to Dave and the rest of the crew out there. We tend to do that 2 times a month on HBCU Digital, as well as our own YouTube channel and other podcasts, wherever you can pick up podcasts at. As it relates to college basketball, I am a contributor for FanSide's Bustin' Brackets Network, covering specifically SWAC and MEAC basketball, as well as other independent and conference-affiliated HBCUs, namely North Carolina A&T and Hampton and Tennessee State. I can be found there at bustinbrackets.com. And my work can be found pretty much anywhere within the MEAC and the SWAC in terms of conferences that are represented on the platform. Finally, I can also be found pretty much every Wednesday night and Friday night on Twitter. On Wednesday night, part of the HBCU Nightly panel of crews when we do our spaces for HBCU Nightly. And on Fridays, I can be found doing and hosting HBCU Hoops Weekly, along with Coach Payne, who is an NAIA expert, and we cover all things about HBCU hoops during those sessions. So, yeah, man, check us out. Check us out.
No doubt about it. Well, Herb, I really appreciate you for hopping on with me today. This was kind of short notice, so I definitely appreciate you for being a part of the broadcast and and giving us and sharing us your thoughts on the band situation previously, as well as the CIAA and the MEAC and SWAC. I appreciate you so much for all of the work that you do. And we'll have to do it again sometime soon and see, maybe after tournament time to see what we come up with. So I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate everybody who's listening on our podcast or watching on our YouTube channel. Make sure you guys hit those notifications so that you don't miss any of the great content that we have coming out for you guys all year long. So I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.